Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The border guard reports an increase in the number of attempts to illegally cross the border from Belarus into Poland. Last Tuesday alone, 103 people tried to enter our country. And lately, practically every day, groups of about 100 migrants tried to cross the border. They are mainly citizens of African and Asian countries. There may be even more attempts to illegally cross the Polish border from Belarus in the near future due to the NATO summit in July. Lithuania has been reporting for a long time. There were also signals to us that at this time the Belarusian side would want to destabilize the situation on the external borders of the European Union. This immigration pressure is also, to put it simply, a good source of income for the Belarusian services. None of these people are being driven to the Polish-Belarusian border for free. Konstantin Mołostow became the new head of the Belarusian border service at the end of May. He commanded the Bruzgi crossing in 2021. With the permission of the Belarusian service, several thousand migrants who wanted to enter Poland illegally reached it. This was eventually thwarted, and Mołostow was subjected to EU sanctions. According to the decree that Lukashenko signed, citizens of 79 countries will be able to simply buy one ticket, a concert voucher for example, which may cost €1 or $1, and legally be in Belarus, and then illegally try to cross the Belarusian border with European Union countries. First of all, special units are involved in this. Units such as the State Security Committee of Belarus, Lukashenko's special service, and the border guards themselves help. The Polish-Belarusian border is almost 420 kilometers long. 7 passenger and 5 cargo border crossings run through it. Currently, only the following crossing point is open for passenger traffic with Poland, Terespol-Brześć. However, for freight traffic, Kukuryki-Kozłowice. We know that Poland is admittedly not a destination for immigrants for various reasons. Let's remember that Poland is part of the European Union. The border between Poland and Belarus is the external border of the European Union. In fact, what happens on the Polish-Belarusian border is a guarantee of security not only for Poland, but also for residents throughout the European Union. According to experts, supporting the cross-border smuggling of migrants through Belarus is part of the hybrid war that Russia is waging against European Union countries. Hybrid warfare brings together actions of an offensive but unconventional nature. Undoubtedly, these can include the migration crisis for which the Belarusian authorities are responsible. Immigrants are trying to cross the Union border from southern Europe as well. At the beginning of June, the interior ministers of the community countries agreed on the so-called Migration Pact. It obliges member states to accept a certain number of people under threat of financial penalty. The Polish government is against forced relocation. This is not a competence of the EU. The issue of security remains the exclusive competence of member states. I know that similar projects on this issue are already being prepared, so a firm no must be said already. A referendum will be held on the forced relocation of migrants. Its exact date is to be announced in about 2 to 3 weeks. A referendum is the only right way. As in the EU, nothing is certain. Even if they withdraw now, the issue will come back in some time. It turns out that the EU values migrants from Africa more than refugees from Ukraine. The European Commission has given Poland nearly 700 million zloty in connection with the massive influx of refugees from Ukraine. Per person, this is about 200 zloty. In contrast, the penalty for failing to accept refugees from the African direction is to be about 100,000 zloty per person. Ukraine is continuing the counteroffensive. Ukrainians are slowly but steadily regaining more territory in the east and south of the country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warns that Russia is considering launching a terrorist attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest of its kind in Europe, which is occupied by the Russians. Meanwhile, the 11th package of sanctions on Russia was announced today. Now our intelligence has received information that Russia is considering the scenario of a terrorist act at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, a terrorist act with the release of radiation. They have prepared everything for this. Unfortunately, I have repeatedly had to remind that radiation has no state borders, and who it will hit is determined only by the wind direction. We share all available information with our partners, everyone in the world, all the evidence. Europe, America, China, Brazil, India, the Arab world, Africa, all countries, absolutely everyone should know this. Russia uses the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as an element in its aggression. It occupies the plant. It uses it to cover the shelling of neighboring cities. It keeps weapons and troops there. There should never be any terrorist attacks on nuclear power plants anywhere. This time it should not be like with Kakhovka. The world has been warned, so the world can and must act. Last week, Poland's third-largest city, Wrocław, beat rivals to be home to the next multi-billion-dollar Intel chip factory in Europe, with a 2-year campaign promising subsidies, infrastructure, and talent.
I would just say that Poland was just a little bit hungrier to win this site, and Wrocław was clearly the hungry team to come and win it.
Interviews with half a dozen Polish government officials and company executives revealed previously unreported details on how Wrocław ticked all the boxes to get what its prime minister said was the largest greenfield investment in its history.
Semiconductor manufacturing has become too concentrated in very few locations in the world, and thus we've seen extraordinary disruptions, as we saw through the pandemic. And we should not be reliant on any single port, any single location, any single country. And with that, U.S., Europe, and Asia need more resilient and balanced supply chains.
Poland started courting Intel in July 2021. Government and municipal officials met with the company repeatedly over the next 2 years, according to interviews with 5 officials and 3 Intel executives. The investment is valued at around $4.6 billion in the new semiconductor facility. A team from an agency promoting the development of Wrocław put together a presentation highlighting its quality of life, family facilities, schools, bike lanes, swimming pools, and economic and demographic data. The site for the factory at Wrocław is divided between 2 municipalities, Miękina and Środa Śląska, and the region will invest in new roads to the factory, electric buses, a water treatment facility, and high-voltage power lines, the mayor of Środa Śląska told Reuters. Intel has also been allowed to construct buildings 50 meters high, more than the usual 20 meters restriction, he said. Last week, Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said the factory would act like a magnet to attract more investment and spur innovation in Poland's tech sector. I can say that this is the largest greenfield investment in Poland. We were together with Pat at the greenfield site, not far from Wrocław in Miękina, and I can say that the vision that I saw there, the vision of development of a new Intel factory, is really impressive, brilliant, and it gives enormous satisfaction. It was really worth the effort of going after this investment. In the face of an unprecedented semiconductor shortage, Europe is offering billions of euros in subsidies to reduce its dependence on Asia. The global shortage of semiconductors has impacted production of everything from cell phones to electric vehicles, a shortage likely to continue throughout 2023, according to the European Parliament, as it takes 2 to 3 years to build a new chip-making factory. According to calculations by experts, the crew of the Titan submarine, which sailed to the wreck of the Titanic, ran out of oxygen today around 1 p.m. Polish time. This means that the chances of the 5 passengers surviving are slim. But the action is still considered a search and rescue. Dr. Michael Gillen, a scientist and journalist who dived to the Titanic wreckage 2 decades ago, said there must have been an overall catastrophic failure for the Ocean Gate Expedition's submersible to go missing on Sunday, June 18th.
There are a couple of pieces of evidence that really stand out to me. Number one, that they lost communications very early in the dive, 1 hour and 45 minutes, less than 2 hours. That means they were on their way down. They hadn't hit the bottom yet. It usually takes about 2 to 3 hours to get to the bottom. That's piece of evidence number one. That's clue number one. And then the other clue is, if it had been a merely communications failure, then why didn't the ship come to the top? You can be sure that the pilot, who's an experienced person, if he experiences a catastrophic communications failure, is going to do everything possible to get that ship to the surface. And that didn't happen, because my understanding was that this Titan was designed so that in case of a crisis, it would come to the surface automatically. It would trigger some kind of buoyancy devices that would bring it to the surface. That didn't happen. So I have to believe that given the evidence, it had to have been not just a communications failure, but some kind of overall catastrophic failure.
Dr. Gillen, who got trapped in a Titanic's propeller and survived the expedition in the year 2000, told Reuters there's evidence that stands out from the case. Firstly, the fact that the vessel lost communication so early in the descent, which according to Dr. Gillen takes between 2 and 3 hours in total. According to Gillen, the undersea noises that have been detected in the North Atlantic search area are a positive sign, but are no guarantees, because if the sub is found, extracting it involves a different degree of complexity. The submersible had 96 hours of air fire, according to the company's specifications, which would mean the oxygen could run out by Thursday morning. But Gillen explained that it depends on many factors, such as occupants of the sub breathing heavily under stress. Meanwhile, new information has been posted by the U.S. Coast Guard on Twitter. A debris field was discovered within the search area by a remotely operated underwater vehicle near the Titanic. Experts within the Unified Command are evaluating the information. Questions about the safety of the Titan were raised in a 2018 lawsuit filed by OceanGate's former director of marine operations, David Lockridge, who claimed he was fired for voicing concerns that the hull could not withstand extreme depths. In its own court claim against Lockridge, OceanGate said he refused to accept the lead engineer's assurances and accused him of improperly sharing confidential information. The two sides settled their court case in November 2018. Neither the company nor Lockridge's attorney have commented on the details of the dispute. Months prior to the suit, a group of submersible industry leaders wrote to OceanGate, warning that the experimental approach to the sub's development could result in minor to catastrophic problems, the New York Times reported. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, have a wonderful evening.